joining me now is Johan Prinsloo, Head of Retirement Fund Administration at Sanlam Corporate. Johan has been at the forefront, leading diverse multifunctional teams of professionals and experts over the past few months, preparing, of course, for the two-pot system go live. Johan will walk us through some of the administrative readiness and the operational changes that were implemented leading up to 1 September, which I might add, yes, there were glitches here and there, but Sanlam Corporate was among the very few that were able to process payments within the first week. A massive and commendable achievement. On that note, well done, Johan, and welcome.
Hello, Letiwe, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So let's kickstart the conversation, Johan. So you've led Sanlam Corporate through the implementation of the two-pot system with just over a month since the go-live date. What has been your experience thus far? Key learnings, strides made, and the challenges?
So, Letiwe, we know that the two-pot system is a complex change in the retirement fund industry, in so much that it affects all process from a retirement fund administration perspective. And then it also introduces new processes, which is the cash withdrawal from the emergency savings pot. And if I can perhaps, just from a challenge, from what consumed quite a bit of time in the project, it was definitely the system development, with a lot of focus on how we're going to implement the cash withdrawal from the emergency savings pot. And then I think the other massive component was the change management. And that ranged from internal training, getting staff up to speed with the two-pot changes, but then of course more importantly also our clients, so that is our boards of trustees, our intermediaries, our participating employers and our members.
Shoo, Johan, well done. It seems like you had your hands full.
Definitely been a very busy, I guess a year and a half now, almost, that we've been working on two-pot.
Wow. Now, I think many members who decided to withdraw didn't fully grasp the tax implications of withdrawing, right? Can you unpack this just a little more, and what are the tax implications that people need to be aware of overall?
Yeah, so I think firstly there was in the initial stages confusion as to which rate, tax rate, SARS will use when making a cash withdrawal from the savings pot. And the answer to that is, as a reminder, that it's your marginal tax rate. In other words, the same tax rate you pay on your salary, you will pay when you make a cash withdrawal from the savings pot. Also, what I think members did not realize, that if your taxable income is borderline to a particular tax bracket, and you make a cash withdrawal and that pushes you over to a next tax bracket, you may be taxed at a higher tax rate. And then a big surprise that came around, I think here in July or so, was the confirmation from SARS that they will also recover arrear tax or tax debt from the cash withdrawal from the savings pot. And from a statistical perspective, if we say we've seen just over 90,000 claims being referred to SARS for a tax directive, and just under 10,000 of that actually had arrear tax on them. And then we have the unfortunate scenario where 1,200 of members received zero payment of their cash withdrawal because the arrear tax exceeded the amount they were able to withdraw. So that is very unfortunate, and what we do encourage members to do is please check your tax account on e-filing, see if you have arrear tax, because it will be a nasty surprise if you have arrear tax and you think you can make a cash withdrawal and then there's nothing to withdraw.
Sure, I think that's very important, Johan. Sad reality, but very important indeed for members to check their tax status before being tempted to tap into that withdrawal.
Absolutely, Olatiwe.
So, Johan, if I submit a withdrawal request and I realize that the tax is too much, or I suddenly change my mind about withdrawing, can I cancel this request?
So that's the other downside of making a cash withdrawal from the emergency savings pot is, in the Sanlam world, 99% of our claims is processed digitally and is automated. So once you submit a claim, you cannot withdraw it. It's going to go through an automated process, And also, once it gets to the tax directive application process, and that tax directive application is made to SARS, we're not allowed to reverse that tax directive application. We, by law, obliged to see the process through. So the short answer is no, you cannot reverse.
Sure. So it's important that members are aware of this and that
Please
they
check
definitely
beforehand.
check before pressing that button.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so when changing jobs or during retrenchment, how is a member's retirement funds managed within the two-pot system?
All right. So perhaps just to reflect on the situation as it was prior to 1 September. So prior to 1 September, we all had what we call a vested pot.
Yes.
And at resignation, you could take that entire vested pot in cash if you so preferred, or you could preserve it in the fund, or you could transfer it to another fund. Okay. Now you've got two new pots added to that, which is the emergency savings pot and the retirement pot. So post 1 September, you can still take your vested pot in cash or preserve it or transfer it to another pot. If you haven't made a withdrawal from the emergency savings pot in the same tax year that you terminate your employment, you can make a withdrawal then. Otherwise, you're barred from doing it. And as we know now, the new rules applicable to the retirement pot is that you have to preserve that retirement pot. You cannot withdraw it at resignation. You can only touch that money at retirement. And that you need to use to purchase an annuity. There are rules applicable. For example, if it falls below a certain minimum amount, the entire benefit can be taken in cash, but likely in most cases you will have to purchase an annuity with your retirement pot at retirement.
Got it. And on the theme of members understanding and communication, how's Sanlam Corporate ensuring that members understand the changes and know how to interact with the two-pot system? Have there been any concerns or misconceptions raised by members? And if so, what are some of the strategies we've put in place to engage and educate our members around the two-pot system?
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, a very big part of the project was change management, and especially how two-pot impacts members, especially the cash withdrawal from the savings pot, but then also when you resign or you retire, what are your options in those events? So I think what we've come to realize is, and although we did a lot of education and training beforehand, we had a multifaceted or a multimedia approach. So we did posters in canteens, we did videos, we did webinars, in-person training, training through intermediaries. You know, we had to adopt the approach of train the trainer, because there's so many members affected that, you know, a core team in Sanlam couldn't possibly do the job, so you had to pay it forward, that knowledge, and train the trainer. So that was a multi-pronged approach. But what we've come to realize, given the complexities of two-pot, is that training is going to be an ongoing thing. And it's probably going to take, in my personal opinion, the better part of 2 years for this to be fully immersed into our member base. I think the difference we see now is where in the past there was a lot of member apathy towards their retirement savings. Now that members has the opportunity to make a cash withdrawal from the savings pot in order to alleviate financial distress, there's now a lot more proactive engagement from members towards the retirement savings, which we of course as an industry welcome. But with that comes the responsibility to help members understand what this new world of two-pot needs.
I like that. And that method of train the trainer is a very, very, very clever and innovative strategy that we've done, Johan. And this is the most that members are interacting with their benefits. So that's also a positive on our side.
Huge positive. We know we've been struggling with member apathy in the industry in the past, and now we see that almost being turned on its head. If I can just recall one statistic, you know, our web registrations increased by over 750%. Compared to previous statistics before the advent of two-pot, which we are of course very glad about, because we are here to help members retire comfortably, and that is a two-way street in engaging and interacting with members.
Okay, so now let's talk numbers, volumes and traffic so far. What was the estimated value of claims the team had anticipated versus where we are now?
So it was really pretty much a guessing game. as you can imagine, because this is an unprecedented process, the cash withdrawal from the savings pot, we had no precedent to fall back on, so it was just all speculation. So, but now, at least now that we're a month and a week into the new dispensation, we do actually have some actual stats that we can share with the audience. So up until Monday, this past Monday, we've processed or received over 93,000 claims, of which 99%, as I mentioned earlier, has been submitted via our member portal. The average claim is about 20,000. The value of these 93,000 claims is ticking up to the tune of 1.8 billion. And we've paid out net value after deduction of tax and that sort of thing, 1.2 billion. And of that 93 million, we've referred 89,000 to SARS. So just on an ongoing basis, I think in the beginning, the early days of September, we saw about 7,000 claims per day. And if you consider that...
Per day?
Per day. And if you consider that Sanlam Corporate processed 5,000 claims per month, in terms of normal resignations and retirals, that is a massive change from an administration perspective. So that 7,000 claims per day slowed down to about and stabilized at about 3,000 claims per day.
Okay. I was about to just actually, that goes nicely into my next question, because I was going to say we saw large volumes of claims at the start, and now you've just said it's slowing down. What type of movement or trend are you anticipating over the next few months?
We do expect, we did always expect a rush. I think what it is, comes as a bit of a surprise is that the rush is a little bit prolonged. We expected it to tune down quite a bit towards the end of September, but that high pressure, if you look at the calls we're receiving in our call center and via our WhatsApp lines, there's still a very high rate of traffic, queries coming in, because I think members that now struggle a bit with registering on the member app and actually making cash withdrawal, or smaller groups being in a bit of an anomalous phase, like for example a Section 14 transfer group of members is now coming to the front, and that's generating quite a bit of queries. But we do expect the trend to go down as time progresses. We also do expect a possible uptake in December, although we don't hope to see that, because members are supposed to only make a cash withdrawal for financial distress and not to pay for a holiday. Then we do also expect to see a possible uptick at the start of the school term in 2025, and definitely an upturn at the start of the new tax year in March 25.
So it just goes to show that some South Africans are under a lot of pressure, especially if you're foreseeing next year with school pressures, etc.
I do think that the high number of claims is a factor of financial distress that citizens in general experience, because it's not just at Sanlam, it's across the board where there are high volumes of claims, and I would think that that is a factor of the economy.
So, I mean, touching on the previous question that we've just talked about, how are we at Sanlam Corporate adapting to potential seasonal or cyclical increases in volumes going forward?
Look, I think we're in the fortunate position where we have the capability to process large volumes of claims on a straight-through automated basis. So cyclical changes won't affect us so much. I think the challenge we saw in the beginning when we went live with Two-Pot was the bandwidth and the traffic that came through firstly the member portal, then we've got what we call a security gateway that sort of validates the user from a security perspective, and then the user comes through to the Sanlam Corporate environment where they submit their claim. Now, the processing capacity of the servers as well as that gateway had to be made bigger on a couple of occasions to allow for the traffic. And I think with that, those lessons learned, we are able to anticipate and cater for high volumes in cyclical events across or during the course of a particular year.
Wow. And I think that's a massive on you, because like the 99% that you mentioned earlier, digital submission, that's massive for us at Sanlam Corporate. So
yeah, we're very grateful for that it's worked out, but it did take a lot of planning, a hell of a lot of workshops. But I'm so pleased and proud that it's reaped the rewards we were planning for.
100%. And then are there a number of steps and processes leading up to a member submitting a claim withdrawal? And these steps involved different stakeholders. So talk to us about the role of employers and advisors in terms of processing claims or providing support to ensure a more efficient process. What are the challenges that you currently face?
All right. What we realized very early on in the project is that Two-Pot is so big and the change is so massive that one service provider in the end-to-end value chain cannot do it alone. We need the support of participating employers and our intermediaries and boards of trustees in
the
order
concept train the trainer.
exactly to make Two-Pot a success and to continue to immerse it in our member base. As I said, I think it will take some time before members fully grasp and understand the impact of Two-Pot. And with that change management, it's not just Sanlam as an administrator that can pull that off. It is a shared responsibility, I believe, with the employer, with intermediaries and service providers to help assist with that change management. And as I also said, it's ongoing. I don't think it's something that stopped on 1 September. It's definitely something that's ongoing. And then the other thing is especially with these smaller groups of members now coming to the front wanting to make a claim from the emergency savings pot, we did create a or a couple of channels through which a member can submit a claim. The first one, as I mentioned, is via the member portal, where the member just needs to register and then submit the claim themselves. We added a challenge with bank account details. So what we asked there was for employer to preload salary bank account details of members and for us then to pay into that bank account, because in the occupational fund environment we don't FIC our members or their bank account details, because that's not how we set up from a retirement fund administration perspective, but we had to get bank account details from a reliable source in order to effect the payment of the emergency savings pot withdrawal.
That's a good method to just control the cybersecurity.
So there was quite a huge fraud risk that we had to bat one or the other way. So that was the one thing we asked of our participating employers. And then we also saw in our engagements with our clients that some employers preferred to control the process, or to oversee the process of making a cash withdrawal from the savings pot, and they preferred to, submit that claim on behalf of their member.
Okay.
And that's why we created that channel additionally for the employer to submit on behalf of a member, either where the employer expressed the desire in terms of the employer or employee value proposition to oversee that process on behalf of the member, or where the member is not able to submit a claim themselves, they can also approach the employer to assist with submitting a claim.
Sure, so we really need to walk this journey together.
Absolutely, I think it's crucial.
Wow, Johan. And then lastly, is there something interesting that wasn't anticipated at all that you've seen emerge from the first month after the system where we went live with Two-Pot?
Well, Olatiwe, you know that members who were 55 years older on 1 March 2021 and a member of a Provident Fund and still a member of that same Provident Fund on 1 September 2024 were excluded or not auto-enrolled into the Two-Pot system, and they had to opt in. And because now, 3 years later, those members are now 58 and above, we didn't expect those members really to enroll into the Two-Pot system. And what we've seen, and what was the surprise, although we have the functionality on the member app, we had to extend that functionality to the employer portal as well, because there was a surprising uptake by these 55-plussers to roll into Two-Pot, which again I think demonstrates the point about financial distress, members being so close to retirement, still wanting to access their retirement savings before retirement, even though they're just a couple of years away from the retirement. So, of those 93,000 claims that I mentioned, it's not a big number, but it's a lot more than we expected. We saw about 1,000 of those of 55-plussers that opted in.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Johanna. This has certainly been interesting, and I've certainly learned a lot about what we've been doing to navigate around our Two-Pot system. So thank you for joining us.
And thank you for having me, Quality Win.
Well, thank you so much. Ladies and gents, that was Mr. Johan Prinsloo, our Head of Retirement Fund Administrator at Sanlam Corporate. Thank you so much for joining us here at our Sanlam in Conversation podcast with me, your host, Ulidilo Ramashala. Until next time, goodbye.